The American Civil Liberties Union is a nonprofit organization that basically works to defend everyone's constitutional rights and the Bill of Rights. And we work in the courts, in legislatures, before administrative agencies, and sort of in the court of public opinion to make sure that the Constitution is there as a protection for everyone. My name is Melissa Goodman. I work at the American Civil Liberties Union, and I direct our LGBTQ Gender and Reproductive Justice Project here in Southern California. At the end of 2012, I moved here to LA from our New York office. And soon after I moved here, I was actually contacted by a number of women directors who wanted to bring to our attention problems of gender discrimination in the industry. There, for a lot of reasons of sort of attorney-client privilege, I can't go into a great amount of detail about sort of the conversations with those women and the process, but suffices to say, it led to many more conversations, and it led us to really launch what was a 2-year investigation into whether there was systemic discrimination in film and television against women. And the unsurprising answer, we came to was yes, and that this was not only a very kind of troubling problem you sort of read about in the newspapers, or you might sort of scratch your head and say like, oh, I wish, Hollywood didn't really work that way. We came to the conclusion that it was also a really serious civil rights problem that deserved our attention, and also the attention of federal civil rights enforcement agencies as well. So the bottom line is, frankly, it's very simple. Generally in employment, employers cannot discriminate on the basis of sex or gender. There are federal laws and state laws that very clearly and specifically prohibit sex discrimination in employment. The federal laws have been in place ever since we enacted the Civil Rights Act in the early to mid 1960s. I'll be honest that I don't know when California enacted their version, but California has their own set of very strong and protective gender discrimination laws as well. But most people who work here in California are protected under both federal law and state law that protect people from sex discrimination. And the bottom line is that sex discrimination in employment is illegal, and Hollywood does not ultimately just get a free pass from following sex discrimination laws just because they're Hollywood or just because of the cultural product that they make. I think there's a lot of reasons that this kind of problem became so long-running and so entrenched. The truth of the matter is that discrimination is a very deep cultural thing in our society, in workplaces. It's in our minds, and it drives a lot of what we do, consciously and unconsciously. And this industry in particular, I think part of what has made it so entrenched and such an intractable problem is that there's not a lot of real incentives out there to solve it without a lot of external pressure. One of the reasons that the ACLU decided to get involved in this issue is that we did actually see that there was a role for us. For intractable civil rights problems, you really need a sort of outside game with outside pressure and an inside game. There needs to be internal industry influences and incentives driving people towards particular outcomes and to change a very discriminatory system. But at the end of the day, for most civil rights problems and discrimination problems, you also need external pressure. You need a hammer coming from somewhere else. And what we wanted to do was come in and say, there's great people doing great work to try to address this problem from within the industry, but we need to be a watchdog here. And not only be a watchdog and bring the power of the ACLU and the microphone that the ACLU has to the issue, but also call to the attention of federal civil rights agencies that have particular powers to enforce civil rights laws and to raise it up as a serious legal problem that can come with real legal action, threat of, money losses for the studios, threat of legal action that they really need to think about. If there was a real will to fix this problem within Hollywood, it's absolutely true that it could be fixed. If the studios and the television networks seriously wanted to fix the problem, they could do it. It could get done. What's lacking is sufficient will to actually make it happen, and then the oversight and accountability that's needed to make sure that that sustains itself and becomes a reality. There's a reason that historically civil rights problems have needed some form of external intervention. You need external pressures to drive people along. This is about getting people to do things that are not in their own best interest. Hollywood, film, and television, at the end of the day, is overwhelmingly made by white men. It's an industry that is already so difficult to make a living in. There's this mentality that you're dealing just with scraps, and why should anyone think about who's getting opportunities? But at the end of the day, we can't have entire industries where women and people of color just do not get a fair opportunity to succeed, that they don't get a fair break into the industry. And to change those things, you need internal desire to do it, but you also need outside legal intervention, consumer pressure, federal civil rights agencies looking over your shoulder and saying, you must do it, here are the specific things that you must do, and I'm going to watch you and hold you accountable to make sure that you're doing it.